Hello, my name is Jonas. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to create a toggle button by using Visual Basics. What's a toggle button? Let's create a new project first. So go to File, New Project, Visual Basics, Windows Phone Application, and I'm just going to call it toggle button. Oops. Oh, got to type that. That's double G. So toggle button, and click OK. Now, what is the toggle button? A toggle button is the button which, when you actually click, changes color. So by default, will be red, let's say, and then when we click on it, we'll change it to green, and vice versa. And then when we click again, we'll go back to red, and so on and so forth. To do this, what we need to make sure is, if we double click on the form, when the form loads, I would like basically this button 1. So let's give a correct name. So I'm just going to call it toggle button, and the actual name of the button will be btn let's call it toggle button. Okay, so what I need to now have named my button appropriately. What I need to do is, when the form loads, I want my toggle button, so btn toggle button dot backcolor is equals to color dot red. So by default, I want this color of my toggle button to be red. So if I press start when the form loads, the toggle button is red. Now what I also need is the btn dot toggle button dot forecolor equals color dot color dot white dot white. So let's run it. So when the form loads, the toggle button is red and the text is white. And I can customize my text further by using the commands, or I could go here. I'm going to select my button, go to the font, and change the settings here. So for example, I want the bold to be set to true and the font size to be set to 12. Now you can do this by going to this code here, but I want these settings to be on both sides, so I just want to control the forecolor and the font color. So if I press start, this is my current toggle button, so when I click nothing happens. Okay, now if I go back to the design view, double click on my button. Now what I need to do, first of all, I need to create a global variable. So I'm just going to click outside my private sub for the btn toggle button, and I'm going to create a new variable. The variable will be my count. I need to count how many times the person has clicked. So my count as integer. So when somebody clicks on this button, I want to call this variable my count, and I will say my count plus equals 1. So it's going to add another value to my count variable. Then I will create an if statement. I will say if my count equals 1. If that's true, then I want my toggle button, so btn toggle dot backcolor to be equals to color dot green. Also, I want to change the forecolor as well, so btn toggle button dot for color to be equals to color dot, let's make it yellow. Now I'm going to create another if statement here. I will say, let's copy this. Actually, in fact, this if statement, I'm going to paste it here. I will say, if this is 2, if my count equals 2, I want this to go back to red, and I want this to go back to white. Okay, but what if I click again? What will happen? It's going to be plus equals 1, which means that it's going to go 3, 4, etc, etc. So I want to bring it back to 0. So what I need to do here is create another if statement. I will say if my count equals 2. So if my variable, my count equals 2, I want my variable, my count, actually 3, not 2, 3. I want to go back to 0, so I will say my count equals 0. So let's revise what we've done. By default, when the form loads, my toggle button will be red, the background will be red, and the for color will be white. Now, when I've created a variable, and I made the variable global. Now let's say, when my count variable, which is an integer, is equals 1, then these are the settings of the button. If my count variable is equals 2, then these are the count of the settings. And if the variable my count equals 3, I want you to take my count back to 0. How my count will add the values? Every time we click on this button, or mouse on button click, we add in another value by adding this command. So my count plus equals 1. Let's test it. So by default, I've got my toggle button, which is red. If I click once, the value now of my count is 1, and because it's 1, the background color becomes green, the for color becomes yellow. If I click again, now my toggle button becomes 2. If it's 2, then it's red and white. And if I click again, nothing happens because I said if it's 3, I have not put anything to happen here. Okay? So it's going to go back to 0. But if I click again, it will go back to 1. So click again, go to red. If I click again, so I've got a problem here. Let's close this. So we'll say, if my count equals 3, this means that my count was 2, which means that if my count is 2, it becomes basically 3. And on 3, I need to basically change the settings again. So I will highlight this, copy, and paste the settings so the background color will be green and the for color will be yellow. Let's click start again. Let's try again. So the form loads, yes, I've got the red and the white text. If I click, I've got the value will become 1. If I click, the value will become 2. If I click, the value will become 3, but it changes. And if I click again, I've got green. So I've got a problem now. And the problem is, when I click here, I don't want this to be red, green again twice. So I've got red now, green, and then green again, and then red. So I fixed the previous problem, but I still have an issue. So therefore now I need to fix this issue. So I need to create an even number. So to do this, what I need to do, I need to highlight this. I need to right click and copy. And I need to paste here this. And then I will say, if it's 3, do that. However, if it's, let's take this off. Here I will say, if it's 4, then do this, but we want this to go back to red and white. So let's copy this and paste it, but we want the value, my count value, to be 0. Let's test the project. Now, by default, let's go here, by default on form load, I've got red and white, that's what I wanted. Now, if I click once now, my count variable now is 1. If I click again, my count variable equals 2. Let's scroll down. If I click again, my count variable equals 3. And if I click again, my count variable equals 4. Now, if my count variable equals 4, this means my count equals 0. And if I click again, I don't have to go back again to red. So it goes back to now 1. So I fixed the problem now that I had. So I click again, 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 I click again. So it doesn't matter how many times it loops, this will be my toggle button. And that's how you create a toggle button by using Visual Basics. Thank you very much for watching.